Hello, this is our next tutorial on solving equations involving distribution, and this time it's going to be solving algebraically using our DCID method. Distribute, combine like terms, isolate, and divide. So I'm going to go ahead and look at problem number 1, and these are the same ones that we solved before using the sketching method, so we can sort of compare how the two methods sort of work together or are similar and different. I'm going to draw my line. Okay, now with the DCID, I'm going to write the steps over here, and we can kind of remember these. The first step is the distribute. That's the multiply step if you have parentheses, and in this case we do. So you're going to multiply the outside number against the insides, and it's number to number, variable with variable. So I've got 3 times 2, that's going to give me a 6, and the x comes with it because it's a 2x, so it's 3 times 2x, which is 6x, but you're just really multiplying the numbers, the coefficients. But then I also have to distribute that 3 to the 1. You have to distribute it to everything inside the parentheses. So then I have 3 times 1, and that gives me a 3. And then on the other side of my equation, I just had a 9. Now just to sort of compare this to when we did the sketchings, we sketched what was inside here in red. Okay, so that was 2x's, which would be 2 triangles, and a 1 cube. And the number on the outside told you how many times you had to sketch that, or how many sets. These are the sets. How many sets? That's 1 set. I would need, here's the second set, and here's the third set, because it said to do 3 sets. Remember, the triangles are your x's, so if I go back and count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's where the 6x comes from that the distribution shows. And the cubes are the constants, and if I add up my cubes, 1, 2, 3, that's that plus 3. So you can see you get the same set sort of information twice, but they're just represented differently. One way is represented visually with the sketching, and the other way is represented algebraically just with the numbers and the variables. So if I'm going to keep going with this, we just did the distribution step. Okay, then I should look to see if I can combine, and you're looking on just the left side and just on the right side. So if I look just on the left side, all I have here, and I will go ahead and underline it in red, is the 6x plus the 3, and I can't combine that because in order to combine, they either both have to have the letter x so that they match and you can put them together, or they both have to not have a variable so that they're just constants and then you can put them together. But since one has a variable and the other one doesn't, I can't put those together, so I'm just going to leave it. And the other side just has the 9, and there's nothing to combine that to. So there was no combine step on this one. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. The next one is to isolate. Okay, you need to get the x by itself. So if I'm looking over here at the x side, I've got the 6 and the 3. But the thing to remember with the isolate is you do the plus and the minus maneuvers first, or you move things around first using plus or minus. So it's that 3. The 3 is connected with the plus. I'm going to move it away first. And remember, we use opposites. That's a plus 3, so I'm going to use a minus 3. And 3 minus 3 is 0, so it cancels, but then I have to do the same thing to both sides. That was one of our first sort of rules of math. And then I'm going to subtract on this side. 9 minus 3 is 6. And then I just bring down this 6x. So I've done my plus minus isolation. Now I'm at my last step. If you've got x's left over, or triangles, when we used to say triangles left over, okay, this is where you have to divide. This is still an isolation step because I still need to get this x by itself, so I have to move away that 6 that's right next to it. And again, we're using opposites. This is 6 multiplied by x, and the opposite of multiplication is division. So I'm going to divide by 6, which is going to make a 1, so we have a 1x. But over here on the other side, I also have to divide. And then 6 divided by 6 also just happens to be 1. Okay, and when we box up our answer, we don't have to put the 1 in front of the x. We can just make that part of our box and say x equals 1. And I know before I showed you like how to check it by substituting it back in for the triangle. So over here on number 2, just like before, I'm going to show you over here how to check it. But this way, I'm going to show you how to check it algebraically. So I'm just going to write down the problem again. Okay. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to take out that x and I'm going to substitute the 1 in its place, because now what we're saying is that the x equals 1. So I'm going to rewrite everything else. This is 2 times x. I'm going to do 2 times, and I'm going to take out the x and I'm going to put that 1 there. And then everything else stays the same. And I'm going to follow my order of operations. So your order of operations tells you that you need to work inside the set of parentheses first. And it also tells us that you multiply before you add. So I'm going to do the 2 times the 1. Okay, so 2 times the 1, that's the 2. And everything else still remains the same. I'm still working inside my parentheses here. Okay, so now I'm going to add 2 plus 1 is 3. And everything else stays the same. And now I'm going to multiply here. And 3 times 3 is 9. And 9 does equal 9. We got the same thing on the right side as the left side, so the equation balanced. So x equals 1 is the correct answer. And so now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to look at examples 3 and 4, just like I did with the sketching. We're going to go back through them, but now we're going to do it algebraically. So this one has 2 distributions. Again, you're multiplying the outside number times the inside. So 4 times 2x, or 4 times 2, that's going to give me 8, and the x comes with it. And then I have to do the 4 times the 1, which is just 4. Make sure you distribute to everything inside the parentheses. And I'm going to do 2 times 3x, which is 6x. Because 2 times 3 is 6. And then 2 times 5, which is 10. So if I write down my DCID steps, I just did the distribute. Now once again, I'm going to look at the combine. So I'm going to look at the left side, 8x plus 4. I can't combine those because they're not both x's and they're not both constants. And then the right side is much the same, 6x plus 10. I can't combine those. And you can only do combining on a side. I can't cross the line and try to do the 6x and the 8x. That's not a combining step, that's an isolate step. So no combining step on this one. So now I'm going to look at the isolate. I notice that I have x's on both sides, and one of the things that we learned with the triangles, the sketch method, is it's good to get your x's taken care of first. So I want to get my x's together, and this is a plus minus isolation, which is what we do first. I'm always going to go to the side with the fewer x's. So I'm going to go between 8x and 6x. 6 is fewer, so I'm going to go over there. I'm going to move that 6x over. It's a positive, so I'm going to use a negative, or you can think of it's basically a plus, because positive is plus, so I'm going to use a minus. And 6x minus 6x is 0, so that goes away, but then I have to do it to the other side. I'm just going to subtract down. 8 minus 6 is 2, so 8x minus 6x is 2x. And then I'm going to bring down the plus 4, and over on this side I'm going to bring down the 10. So I've done one isolate step, but my x is still not by itself, and I have constants on both sides, like those number cubes, the 4 and the 10. So I've got to get them moved away. And you always go to the side with the x, because remember, you want this x by itself. So I've got to move the 2 and the 4 away. Now the 4 is the one that's connected with the plus sign, so I'm going to move it first. And we're going to use the opposite. The opposite of plus is a minus. And so 4 minus 4 is 0. This is the same as when we used to take away that 4 cube. But then I got to take it away on the other side. So I have 10 minus 4 is 6. And I'm going to bring down this 2x. I still want to get the x by itself, so I got to take away the 2. We just finished the plus minus isolation step. Now we're at the divide step, because 2 times x is what that says. So the opposite of times or multiply is to divide. So we're going to do this divide step. I got to divide by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. So I get 1x, which is what you want. You only want 1x. But then I have to divide on the other side. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So then I get 1x equals 3, and the 1 just becomes part of my box. If you want to check it, you would substitute that 3 in in both places where the X is and the original appear in red, and then you would follow your order of operations, and you should get the same number on both sides. I'm not going to check that one, but I will check 4 after I finish it. So let's move on to 4. Okay, this one also has a distribution, but it's going to go through all the DSID steps. I'm going to write them all down here. Okay, there's no number in front of the X, so I'm going to put a 1 there, and I'm going to start my distribution. 3 times the 1x, so 3 times 1 is 3x. But remember, I also have to do the distribution to the 1s. I have to multiply the 3 times the 1, and 3 times 1 is 3, so I'm going to do a plus 3. Now, I do not distribute to that 2x. That 2x was not inside the parentheses, so it's not part of the distribution. I'm just going to bring it down. And then on the right side, I've got 4x plus 4. So that's the distribute set. Now, as far as the combining step, I'm going to look at the left side. Now, I notice I've got 2 sets of x's there. That would be good to put those together because I've got this 3x here and I've got this 2x there. So if I put those together, then I can do this combined step. And it says that it's 3x plus a 2x, so the 2x got a plus sign in front of it, and they're both positive. So 3 plus 2 is 5x. And that would be like when we had the 3 triangles and the 2 triangles, and we put them together. Notice that that was 5 triangles. Well, that's the same thing as 5x. This 3, I'm just going to bring it down. And then on the right side, 4x plus 4 cannot be combined because they're not both x's. So I'm just going to write it down. So the combine step is done. Now we're to the isolate step. Remember, we're going to do plus minus first, and it's very similar to the previous one. We need to get our x's together. 4x is the one with the fewer x's, so I'm going to move it. It's positive or plus, so I'm going to use a negative or minus. So 4x minus 4x is 0, so that cancels, but then I have to do it to the left side, and 5x minus 4x is a 1x. Then I'm going to bring down this plus 3, and I'm going to bring down this 4. I do not have to put the plus sign in front of it, but I mean, you can if you want. Okay, I still need to isolate that x. That x is still not by itself. There's that 3 next to it, which is the same as that, like that 3 cubed. So this is still the isolate plus minus. So if I look at how the 3 is connected, it's connected with a plus sign. The opposite is to subtract. So 3 minus 3 is 0. It goes away, but then I have to do the same thing to the other side. So I got 4 minus 3 is 1. And on this side, I'm going to bring down the 1x. And what you want is a 1x, so that's your answer. The 1 just becomes part of the answer, the box. Okay, now I am going to check this, but I'm going to check it over here on this other side so we can sort of see it side by side. So I'm going to erase this part since we already did that one. Okay, and I'm just going to mark through this. And I'm going to remember that my answer is x equals 1 because that's what I'm going to substitute. And I'm going to rewrite this problem just the way it appears. I'm not going to change anything. Now, where there are these x's, well, I'm going to highlight in red, that's where I'm going to put in my 1. Okay, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to start doing that. So I've got a 3 parentheses, but in that place of that x, I'm going to put a 1 there. Okay, and then I'm going to keep going. Plus 1, plus 2. Now, I'm not just going to put a 1 there. Since there's no parenthesis here, I'm going to take, when I take away the x, I'm going to put a parenthesis and put the 1 in its place. I didn't do it on the other one because there was already a set of parentheses there. And I'm going to keep going. 4. And when I take out that x, I'm going to put a parenthesis and put the 1 in place of it. And then I've got the plus 4. Now I'm going to start following my order of operations. Like over here, I need to add those two together inside. And 1 plus 1 happens to be a 2. And I'm just going to bring everything down. I'm just going to do it sort of like one at a time. Now, before I do any of the adding, we can multiply first. So I can multiply here, and you multiply left to right. So I can multiply the 3 times the 2, that's the 6. But I can also multiply here. 2 times the 1, that's 2.